recognize I have a self-sabotaging pattern, how do I get rid of it? So I always say, like, these patterns live on the foundation of beliefs, right? So I mentioned that before. Like, even if it's something like the inner critic simply acts within the boundaries of what you believe to be true. So it's always scanning the world. And that's why it always kind of has this like should. You should be this way. You should do this. So if you get rid of the beliefs, then there's no space for the inner critic to actually operate, right? It's the same thing with the self-sabotaging behaviors. The simplest way that I can explain in this context is, if you know what the pattern is, start by asking yourself the question, like, what would I have to believe to keep acting in this way? And you'll usually have to go multiple layers down to get to what the core issue is. And even that, like, usually there's like a core belief that's like very simple, generally from when you were really young, something like, I'm not good enough. But then on top of that, you have all these survival beliefs that have played out to be true in particular context. So like, if I'm not good enough generally, then, you know, I have to make sure that all of my work is perfect because I'm not good enough. So that's how it develops in work. If it's in relationships, then it might be, you know, I can't put my own needs first. I have to watch for my partner because I'm not good enough to have my own needs. So you'll have like, sometimes you can get rid of like the surface level beliefs and work through that, but then you fundamentally haven't gotten rid of the core belief. So that's why this is a process of like going under and
You're listening to the First Class Life Show, hosted by Lindsey Vertner, a holistic personal development show for high-achieving leaders who desire to maximize their impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. So grab a drink, grab your notebook, and let's get started. Hey, First Class family. Welcome back to another episode of the First Class Life Show. I am your gorgeous host, Lindsey Vertner. And today we have Drasko Raicevic with us. And we are going to hop into this conversation because I know as a high achieving leader that you are, you don't have any time to waste. But before we do that, I need you to subscribe, like, comment, love, share, do all the things as you're listening to this episode, okay? Share out your insights because sharing is caring. And we have to spread awareness about this show because we talk about the tough topics that impacts us as leaders, impacts how we show up or don't show up in our personal and professional lives. We take it there, okay? So I know that you're maximizing your impact and creating your life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. So let's jump right into the conversation. Welcome, Drasko. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Good. Glad to have you here. Now, where are you located today?
I'm in Toronto today.
Ooh, Toronto, Canada. So our neighbors up north, well, up north of me, depending on where you're listening, might be the west, south, east, something like that.
Correct.
But I want you to share with the First Class family, like, who is Drasko really? Like, give us the good tea. Who are
the good teas. Well, so I guess the easiest way to explain who I am is just start about 13 years ago, which is when I was in this state where I realized like the 9-to-5 life wasn't for me. Like I followed a very traditional path with regards to like my early life, you know, immigrated to Canada. So like the main thing was like, you know, go to school, get good marks, do all of the things, did all of those things, went to university, graduated from a business program and, you know, started working 9-to-5 and quickly realized I was like, you know what, this whole 9-to-5 thing like isn't really for me. And I was training martial arts and teaching martial arts since I was 16. I was doing that after work. And basically I was like, you know what? If this 9-to-5 thing isn't for me, why don't I just try making money with something that I'm doing already? So I started teaching cardio kickboxing classes in the evenings, and that started to pick up. And then I was like, you know what? Why don't I just like, let's just give this a go. Like, what else do I have to lose? So I went in and I started doing that to like be paid for it after work. People started coming to me for weight loss. And I was like, you know what, this isn't the best modality to like get people to lose weight. And I had my own struggles like with weight growing up and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, well, let me just learn how to do like personal training. So I started learning that, and then my clientele quickly picked up, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to quit the 9 to 5 life. Let me just try and make this whole thing work. So I started basically getting into like figuring out how do I become a personal trainer. So I started getting like my knowledge up in that and getting certified. Then it went into nutrition because I was like, okay, I got to get people to like eat properly as well. And then that really like led me down into like learning how to actually coach people beyond just like the natural experience and ability that I had, like being good with people and coaching them. So long story short, that led into this 10-year period where I had built up a brick and mortar weight loss center. So it was like we dealt with the quote unquote like hard cases, meaning like people that have had, 20 to 100 pounds that they weren't able to lose pretty much most of their life. And we did everything in-house. So the actual exercise, we did the nutrition, and we did the lifestyle coaching. And that all, grew to about 200 clients, 4 staff, and kind of everything on paper was right, except that it imploded once it hit the 10-year mark, simply because I was so unaware. Like I always thought I was like doing personal development. Obviously I was into a lot of things from the coaching realm, but I wasn't really aware of how much like emotional constipation and emotional blind spots I had with regards to a lot of things that basically started to seep into the business, started to be the reason why I made a lot of poor choices that ultimately just imploded the business. And the business imploded right before COVID started. I wish I could, blame it on the pandemic, but it was like 2010 January, like literally 10 years after I registered my business. I had to close it down in like March. Everything started, so I couldn't even blame it on the pandemic. It was like it was all me, But yeah, so then that really got me on this journey in the last 3 years to heal and reveal and like just work through all of this baggage that actually led to the imploding of that business. And in that process of like not just reinventing what I do, but like my own identity and what it all meant, initially, because I was like, okay, I'm kind of unemployable at this point, like 10 years, like I've done my own thing. Like, what am I like? I could be hired to like be a trainer at like some gym, but I'm like, it's not really going to work for me at this point. Right. So I had built my gym a non-typical way, meaning most like local brick and mortar gyms are built through like referrals and community. And obviously I had some of that, but like the majority of my growth came from like online advertising. Like I pretty much was like the funnel guy with a local business. So I'd done all of the ads, all of the funnels, all of the systems. So I was like, this is the only skill I have. Let me figure out like what I can do with this. So I started doing all of this work for other, at this point, online coaches. And what I quickly realized was like, even though I started getting clients on retainer and I started like delivering results, I was like, what I'm really interested in here is not like I'm good at the technical, like marketing, whatever stuff, but like what I'm really excited about, excuse me, is like actually helping the business owner, like get out of their own way to make all of the marketing work. And then that's when I began using like the modalities and the things that I was learning in my own healing. I started applying to like the clients that I was working with, helping them with all this other stuff, which then basically opened up and got me to this point where I was like, okay, I need to get honest again. Like I cannot repeat the same mistake again. This isn't exactly what I want to do. What I'm really here to do is help evolve the human behind the entrepreneur. So I got to go all in on that. And that's kind of what, brings me to the work that I do now. And then I guess you can in some ways call it like the third business that I started as a result of all of this. And yeah, long story long, here we are,
Hey, I know it can be exhausting blazing the trail and creating a legacy. And you're at the point in your life where you desire peace and rest. You want to enjoy both the physical freedom and financial freedom to live life on your terms. You understand the importance of prioritizing your self-care. And you know that you're worthy of transformational experiences surrounded by other high-achieving, goal-oriented women just like you. That's why you deserve to be treated like VIP at the First Class Life Luxury Self-Care Retreat for Women. You deserve to show up and just be you. Away from the titles and roles that keep you busy from day to day. You deserve the luxury to fully unplug. It's time for you to embrace your first class life. Visit firstclassliferetreats.com to secure your VIP spot today, because you deserve it.
No, but you mentioned a few things that I definitely want to make sure that I point out. Specifically, the first one that pops in my head is about you had to close your business in January, and then the pandemic hit in March of that year. And so you couldn't blame it on the pandemic. And I feel like that was a blessing in disguise, because had the pandemic hit before you close your business, then it might not have caused you to be able to face, okay, what is really the issue? Because oftentimes, you know, as human beings, that's what we like to do, is we like to point the blame at other things. Oh, I didn't have enough education, or I didn't have enough money, or the support system, or it was how I was raised, or, you know, ... fill in the blank. We like to blame it on our external factors and not take self-accountability. So how do you feel about that? Does that resonate with you? Like, do you think if the pandemic would have hit before you closed, like you would have been able to reach, not that you wouldn't have along the way, but to reach that same level of self-accountability?
I think it was definitely a blessing in disguise. Like, it didn't feel that way in the moment. 110%. Like, you know, like 10 years of our identity, like being just thrown out in like 1 month is not something I wish for a lot of people. In terms of like, would it have made a difference if it had happened in the pandemic? I think the only difference would have made is it would have made it more intense, because I would have pushed harder, probably got like loans, probably got like stuff to throw into the business, like financially, to keep it afloat. And then it would have all crashed anyway once the pandemic hit, because everything closed down. You know what I mean? So I don't foresee a way that it would have stayed open. So I don't think the end result of like me having to face my own like inner baggage would have been different, because it was so blatant, like looking back on it now. I think it would have been a worse situation had I actually pushed and fortunately not been stubborn like I was before, to be like, no. Like, just as an example, like one of the big reasons why the business imploded was because I was less interested in building a successful weight loss center, because it was what I was truly passionate about. I was definitely passionate about helping people, but the nutrition and the weight loss was a vehicle to that. I was trying to prove that I could be a successful entrepreneur. So I was building it out of this desperation to prove my own worth through the business. So if the pandemic had hit and I had to crash, I would have still had to face the exact same thing. So it was a blessing in that it actually got me to cut my losses before they were even worse.
Yes, I can understand all of that. And that is definitely a very insightful thing to think about, like not how the way that it was a blessing in disguise. And it would have been worse had they like blamed it on the pandemic and things of that nature. So, you know, we talked about just that journey, and before you started your business, you did the typical route. You went to school, got the 9-to-5. And did you have any outside influences that kind of set you up, like, this is the way you should do things? Because I know society can be an outside influence that says, all right, you're to go to school, you get married, you to have this job from 9 to 5, get your pension, which they don't even have pensions anymore. But, you know, they lay it out for us of what life should look like. And so how was that journey for you? Did you have people in your ear like, this is what you need to do, and you just kind of felt like, it's not going to work for me?
I never even questioned it until I was in the 9-to-5, and I was just like, this is not for me. Like, there was nothing, like I said, like a typical immigrant story where it's like, nobody asks you what you want. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like not even a thing of like, you have a choice. Like you're here to like, there's like, we moved to Canada. You don't like speak the language, you don't do anything. Like nobody asks you for nothing. It's like you do the thing that you're told. And if you don't, like, you know what I mean? Like my parents are old school. So like you get smacked up. Like that was the thing. So it wasn't even like, a question. Like I didn't know that was an option. My path was always that. I mean, I did enjoy learning. I did like school. I did excel naturally in school. Was there a lot of pressures? Parents, 110%. But it was this thing where it was like, it also aligned with like some of the things I naturally like to do. So it seemed like it was a natural fit. It's only after I'd looked back and started healing my own trauma from that I realized, oh, there's actually a lot of stuff in that setup that were creating patterns in my life now, in how I was showing up and how I was making my decisions, in how I was acting as a leader inside of my business, related to results, related to my attitude towards failure, related to like consistency, related to success. All of those things creeped in, but like you don't know what you don't know at those times. So yeah, I guess looking back on it, 110%, I just followed somebody else's template. But I didn't know that at the time.
And that is true for a lot of us. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because oftentimes we don't realize how the things from our childhood and our upbringing and those experiences that we had are impacting how we show up in the world. It's impacting our behaviors at a subconscious level. So we can't figure out like, wait, this is not really what I want for myself. This is what someone else told me that I should have. Not that it, like you said, you didn't enjoy the journey along the way, but it's not something that you came up with for yourself. So you mentioned about, you had to heal those traumas that you didn't recognize were there. And earlier, I think you said, was it emotional constipation? Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Tell us about that. So when you're referencing those traumas and that emotional constipation, talk to us about that. What is that journey? What are you talking about? Because I'm sure we all have a little bit of that.
Yeah, we definitely do. So I think there's a lot of different ways that I can go about this. So like, okay, number one, right? So the way that I define trauma is essentially anything that's too much, too quick, too soon, right? Given the resources that I have at the time or the capacity that I have at the time. So, a lot of people have this misconstrued notion that like, we have to have like this big T trauma for it to qualify, like, abuse, rape, all of these things, which 110% are part of that. But like too much, too quick, too soon could mean, your teacher tells you that your third grade project of making this diorama is stupid. You know what I mean? Like for somebody in grade 3 that's that young, like that could be a pivotal moment that they wrongly end up embracing something that's not actually theirs. And it's not actually true. It's not reflective of who they actually are. That also, in my world, qualifies as traumatic, right? It's just the volume is different and the intensity is different. So that's number one. And the reason that I bring that up is, like you said, we all have those things and we all carry that around, and it bleeds into, it bleeds into different aspects of our life. Unknowingly. So when I talk about emotional constipation, it's something that so many of my clients also experience. They just don't know they're experiencing it. So, for those of you that are like watching or listening to this, like on video or whatever, like you'll see in my background's got like a crap ton of books, right? So it's like my strategically placed bookcase to make me look smarter than I actually am, right? But in addition to that, like I have actually read like 60-70% of these books front to back. So intellectually, I was somebody like, I like to solve problems using my head. And a lot of my clients are the same way. That's why they're entrepreneurs. That's why they do good things, because we can solve problems. But what we oftentimes run into as entrepreneurs in this situation is we end up with the man with the hammer problem, right? Like we have a hammer, everything's a nail. That's how I solve all problems. So what ends up happening is because we're so good at outthinking our way through things, outworking our way through things, when emotional issues come up, and obviously trauma would be an emotional issue, we try to outthink our way through it. I will just affirm my way out of it. I'll meditate my way out of it. I'll journal my way out of it. I'll go to a workshop and do something. I'll do talk therapy for a long time. And yet nothing really changes. Like the general pattern that I've experienced, and then I've experienced with clients as well, is like, no, we always have that one friend who like dates the same person in a different form. It's like the exact same drama is happening again and again. So I'm like, the common denominator is you. Like it's not them. You know what I mean? But like they have to stumble their way through that realization. The same thing happens in our business, and the same thing happened in my business. Like I was in these cycles of recreating. In my instance, it was like the feast and famine revenue cycle, which is ultimately what blew the business up, because I wasn't comfortable dealing with a lot of receiving and like being worthy of a lot of money coming in. A lot of money would come in. I'd find ways to just like spend it, right? But that's a emotional response to me finding worth in a warped way, and then self-sabotaging unknowingly to actually create that particular result. So going back to the emotional constipation, I couldn't recognize that because I thought I was doing personal development through all of the reading and using my head. The result of that was I was viewing all of my emotions as if I was viewing them through glass. Like the same way you go to a zoo and you're like, hey, look, there's a lion. Hey, look, there's like this. Like I was viewing like, oh, look, there's depression, there's anger, there's like joy. But there was always a layer in between my awareness of it and actually feeling it, because I didn't know how to feel. I wasn't safe in actually feeling them. Right. And you asked me before about like, oh, did you have like pressures to perform? Like that was part of my trauma. Like I had parents who were very good at keeping me physically safe and good and okay, but they just didn't have the skill sets to meet me where I needed to be met emotionally. So that's how I dealt with it. I just was trying to outthink my way through everything. And that's what led to these problems, because they always boil over. You're going to get to a point where you cannot outthink emotional problems because it's just it's the wrong tool for the job. So yeah, I know that kind of went all over the place, but I hope that answered your question.
Looking for amazing products to help boost your first-class lifestyle? Then head over to firstclasslifeshop.com, where you can treat yourself to personal development books and workbooks, lifestyle affirmation cards, adult coloring books, mugs, notebooks, hoodies, t-shirts, leggings, and more. All products were designed to help you master your mindset, walk in your purpose, and live your first-class life, because you deserve it. So treat yourself today at firstclasslifeshop.com. Again, that's firstclasslifeshop.com.
And that was good, because we struggle with this. No matter who you are, where you come from, we all have these things that we struggle with. And so you mentioned a few things like self-sabotage and making that shift. What are some signs of self-sabotage? Like how was one able to identify, oh no, I'm self-sabotaging, before they take those actions to course correct?
So specifically for self-sabotage, it's any repeating pattern. Okay. It's like, again, just like I mentioned, like I use the example of the person who dates the same individual, because like we all have that visual, we all know that person. So it's like, okay, well, how is that self-sabotage? Well, it's self-sabotage because you are doing things inherently that put you in situations that you don't actually want, but because of the warped thinking, you actually always get back into those situations. Okay. So to rewind and contextualize that further, right? Self-sabotage, within business is going to be things like, I know what to do, but I'm not actually doing it. I know I should be, making this post that's making me uncomfortable, but I don't actually do it. If I have a team, right, how many red flags do I paint green when it comes to performance with my team? Because I don't actually want to be confrontational, or I have my own people-pleasing tendencies, right? It is the perpetuation of those patterns that actually self-sabotages your business. That's what leads to the overwhelm. That's what leads to you having to overwork. That's what leads to you making decisions that are going to lead to, the feast and famine, etc. So the quickest way as far as like recognizing the pattern is just what keeps repeating, what seems to be chronic for me, maybe in a different form, but the same thing keeps happening again and again. Then at that point, it's you. And the other part I think to recognize about self-sabotage is, okay, if you can see the pattern, we always then get into judgment like, oh, why am I so like broken? Why am I so stupid that I keep doing the same thing? What's wrong with me? Why can't I out-discipline myself out of this? That's the wrong way to look at self-sabotage. What I always say when it comes to self-sabotage is it's something that is very, very real, but it doesn't actually exist. So like, how do you have something that's real but doesn't actually exist? The consequences of it are 110% real, right? Like if I have people-pleasing tendencies and I always paint my red flags green with the people in my life, the consequences of that are very real. You're going to have to pick up that slack. You're going to have to live with, whatever the ripples of those red flags are. The reason it doesn't exist is because you always, like you never have a behavior subconsciously that's actually going against you. It's just operating on an emotional logic that you cannot, like isn't conscious yet. And it's different from the logical logic that we all witness consciously. Meaning like, I know I should do this, but I don't do it. Why? Because somewhere subconsciously, I have a safety mechanism. I have a safety pattern. I have a safety narrative that says it's better to put the needs of somebody else instead of my own. So based off of that belief, you're not actually going against yourself, right? It's like nobody resists change. What we resist is going against our beliefs. So if I have a belief that I cannot put myself first, I'm actually acting in alignment with that. But externally, I see that pattern of self-sabotage. So the judgment and the guilt you add to it is just extra baggage and extra layers you got to work through to actually get to the root of it. So again, long story long.
That's it. No, we love it here. Okay. This is why we love this show, because we talk about the important things. And, I have something called the 3 pillars of self, which focuses on self-care, self-worth, and self-discipline, and how each of those 3 areas are subconsciously connected to every single thing that we do in life. And so you are speaking my jam. Okay. So we're in heaven, Drasko. Don't you apologize for anything.
I figured we would get along on this one. So yeah, it's all good.
Yes. Now you mentioned that self-sabotage, not being real, producing real results, but not being real in the sense that it is in alignment with our inner beliefs, those subconscious beliefs that we hold based on, those experiences that we've been through in life. And so how does one begin to identify what those beliefs are in their lives?
Yeah, so I think that the first thing that I would just again contextualize with that, I can never give you like a simple answer. I always have to like paint it with like 10 million different pictures around it. So the first thing I would contextualize there is when people say recognize this, or somebody listening to this, they're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, let me try and like figure this out. We will default to more or to adding, meaning, okay, so if this is like a pattern that I just have to change, cool. So let me like get really good at like thinking differently. Let me get really good at, like I said, affirming my way out of it. Let me get really good at journaling and figuring out the awareness of what the pattern is. I'm not saying there's no value in that. There definitely is. However, people focus so much more on adding, and we use transformation to mean like, I got to remove myself and become something different. I found that approach to generally, like at best, be getting to the same place uphill, but more commonly, it puts you on a hamster wheel of trying to outwork your way out of problems when there's a better path. And to me, the better path, the one that was more efficient for me, the one that gets great results with my clients, and the reason it gets them quickly is I actually focus on the elimination more so than the addition. So the way that I define healing is a return to wholeness, right? Like if you think about when we're sick, and I'm bedridden, sick, coughing, whatever, when I heal, I don't transform into like this better version of myself. I return to the baseline of where I was before. And then now life is asking from me, okay, can I walk in the healing and like go live life? So the way that I see all of these patterns, all of these self-sabotaging patterns, all these inner limits, the head trash, like whatever terminology you want to use for it, to me, those are layers that we have added because we've tried to find safety in unsafe situations, and that's how we dealt with them. It's not the path to like now add another layer that's quote unquote positive so I can transform. The quickest path is to let go of the baggage that isn't you so you can reveal the wholeness that's underneath. Okay. All that to contextualize, okay, well, if I recognize I have a self-sabotaging pattern, how do I get rid of it? So I always say like these patterns live on the foundation of beliefs, right? So I mentioned that before. Like even if it's something like the inner critic simply acts within the boundaries of what you believe to be true. So it's always scanning the world, and that's why it always kind of has this like should. You should be this way, you should do this. So if you get rid of the beliefs, then there's no space for the inner critic to actually operate, right? It's the same thing with the self-sabotaging behaviors. The simplest way that I can explain in this context is if you know what the pattern is, start by asking yourself the question, like, what would I have to believe to keep acting in this way? And you'll usually have to go multiple layers down to get to what the core issue is. And even that, usually there's like a core belief that's like very simple, generally from when you were really young, something like, I'm not good enough. But then on top of that, you have all these survival beliefs that have played out to be true in particular context. So like, if I'm not good enough generally, then, I have to make sure that all of my work is perfect because I'm not good enough. So that's how it develops in work. If it's in relationships, then it might be, I can't put my own needs first. I have to watch for my partner because I'm not good enough to have my own needs. So you'll have like, sometimes you can get rid of like the surface level beliefs and work through that, but then you fundamentally haven't gotten rid of the core belief. So that's why this is a process of like going under and under, eliminating at each level until at one point the patterns that have, kind of wreaked havoc in your life just start to not happen anymore. So it's that combination of like, I'm very results oriented. Like I don't do feel good personal development. Like if you want that, you can go to a seminar. Like for me, what are the results that you want as defined by you? Cool. Are you showing up that way in your life more often as a result of us working together? If the answer is yes, then we're moving in the right direction. If the answer is no, then we just continue that same process on a very like macro level. So,
Are you loving the First Class Live Show? Then join our private Patreon community. Not only will you help to support our ability to provide you with great content, but you can also get exclusive perks like bonus videos and resources, discounts, episode transcripts, and more. So what are you waiting for? Join today at patreon.com/firstclasslife. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/firstclasslife.
Ooh, this is so good. Hopefully you are taking notes, First Class family. Listen, I love our First Class guests, and you are officially a part of the First Class family now, Drasko. So welcome. Now, I know that you mentioned about emotional blind spots. Can you explain what those are?
Correct. So like in the way that I operate, I always say like I work on the 4 levels of permanent human change. So I work on the mind, right, which we've talked about quite a lot as far as like the beliefs, and we can go into subconscious and unconscious aspects of that. And then there's the emotional, the somatic, and the habit parts of change. So to me, emotional blind spots it's kind of like, okay, where do we feel emotions? And a lot of people can't even, to retrain back. Or to rewind back, right? Oftentimes I'll have clients that come to me, and when I ask them, okay, well, how do you actually feel? They'll contextualize the answer of like, yeah, I mean, there's like this and this happened. And like, then I'm like, no, okay, that's what happened. I understand why, like, you're upset, but like, how do you actually feel? And oftentimes people won't actually be able to tell me, like, simply put, like, I'm feeling sadness. I'm feeling disappointment. It's usually under some explanation of who wronged them, what happened, what they wish they would have done. That's like the first layer of response. That's what I was talking about before when I was like, I was witnessing all my emotions, but it was like through glass. So emotional blind spots, as far as I define them, is that first layer reaction. I ask you how you feel and you don't actually know, or you think your emotions happen in your head. Like, you know, I was talking to somebody recently and I was helping them through anger. And I'm like, okay, well, when you feel angry, where do you feel it? Well, I feel it in my head. I'm like, okay, well, describe to me what you mean. Well, it's like I'm pissed off and I have all these thoughts that I want to smash things and like I'm like, there's injustice here and like, why does that have to keep happening? I'm like, that's what you're thinking. That's your subjective experience of it. But like, where do you actually feel the anger? I was like, oh, I actually feel it in my chest. I feel it in my arms. Like I have like power that I want to like expel out. And it's okay, cool. So that's an emotional blind spot. And why that's relevant is, like, let's just say if we're talking about entrepreneurs, like they ultimately want to do things so they can get better result. You don't do things because you think better thoughts. You do things because of the way that you feel. Like if you felt enthusiastic, if you felt motivated, it would be very easy to do the thing. The reason we struggle with it is like we often feel in opposition to what we want to do. So either we don't have the capacity to sit with that resistance, or we don't have the skill to actually elicit the emotion that we need to do the thing. So if you have emotional blind spots, it's kind of like you can't change what you can't see. If you're not aware of that, it's going to be very hard to permanently change your behavior. And it's also why I spend a lot of time working somatically. So for people that don't know that, it's like, if you think of like, where do emotions happen? Okay, they happen in my body. I understand that. Fine. Okay, but where exactly in the body? They happen in your nervous system. So if the vehicle through which you experience this is also screwed up, it's going to be very hard for that vehicle to run well, right? Like if you think of like, I have a great engine, but it's in this like crap box exterior. Like it's just not going to work well. So we want to make sure that all of those pieces are aligned. You can identify your emotions. You can then build the body, so the somatic nervous system body, to hold that, to not panic, and also hold the capacity of something new and better so you feel safe in it. That makes the habits, the actions, like the up-leveled actions, so much easier. And the way that I've defined embodiment, you can think, feel, and act in alignment with the result that you actually want.
Nice. So you mentioned the four, was it? Was it mind, mind, emotions, somatic, habits? And what did you call
Correct.
it?
Yeah, if this was a test, that would be an A+ answer. So you're good. Correct. Yes, it's like I call it just the 4 parts of permanent human change. If you can change on all 4 of those levels, you have now embodied change. There's no need. Like usually people get stuck on like, they just change the stuff in their head. Mm-hmm. Like mindset change. To me, mindset is just a station that's playing in your head. Like you set where your mind is going to go to. So like I'm listening to a better station, but then neck down, everything's a mess, right? This is why you're not seeing the changes. And what I oftentimes see, let's just say in the spiritual community, is like they'll actually work on the mind. They'll work on releasing the emotions. They'll work on like building a better somatic body, but then they'll neglect the courage aspect it takes to actually do the big actions to get the big results, which is why oftentimes like you have these kind of great, well-meaning spiritual individuals that are usually broke and they're not really doing much with their lives outside of that. I'm like, that's great and I love it and I'm all for it, but you got to add the last part to actually get the results, because in my opinion, when you can get the results, that's when you can continue to do the most good. So that's also an aside, but we can get into that if you want.
Listen, we like all of the tangents, all of the sides, all of the things here on the First Class Life show. So we've talked about so much, and it's been good, juicy things. What would you say, or let's say someone is just beginning on this journey, what would you say are your top tips or suggestions to start to break all four of those things, those habits? We know different things that we can use to change our thinking, because it is all connected: our thinking, our thoughts, our actions, our emotions, all of those things. So what would you say are the top tips to start to break into those four different parts so that you can make that lasting change?
I mean, well, obviously get a coach so that you can just feed through all of this and not have to waste your time. But outside of that, okay, basically I think it's the same thing that I would say even in how I start my program, which is what I call mapping the up levels or mapping the limiting self. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what this is, it's like you basically just break down, okay, what's the pattern that I keep experiencing in my life that I don't want? Okay. Next column beside that, okay, well, what are my thoughts around it? Like when I'm in this pattern, what am I thinking? Like, how do I think about it? How do I think other people should act? What do I think about it? Like just all like brain dump all the thoughts of it. When I'm in the pattern and I'm thinking all of these things, how do I actually feel? Right? That's your third column. Okay. When I feel that way, how do I act? Okay. That's your next column. And ultimately, what's the result of those actions? Okay. So if anybody knows like the life coach school or Brooke Castillo, like that's essentially her model. Right. So she has a lot of podcast episodes on that. You can dive into that, but that's like such a good place to start because it allows you to just map out, okay, like this is the essence of my pattern. Here it is. This is what keeps repeating. How am I contributing to it thought wise? How am I contributing to it emotion wise? How am I contributing it to it action wise? And then what's the result? And the result will generally be something related to the habit, but you at least see that connection and the interplay between those. That's a very simple way that you can use this tool to observe, and then obviously to change it. That's a whole different story, but that's at least a good place to start.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely, because it encompasses all of the different areas and like the four parts that you mentioned. So for those that aren't aware, if you're new to the First Class Live show, in 2007, I fully recovered from being brain dead and paralyzed after a fatal, to the listeners, fatal in air quotes, because I'm not a ghost, after a fatal car wreck. And that just boiled up a lot of the things that I thought I had healed. You know, you mentioned about, we think we're on this personal development journey only to realize, wait a minute, no, we've just been watching it, not really doing the real work. And so for me personally, that belief was that feeling of not being good enough that was a result of having an absent father, knew who he was, had moments with him, but he wasn't a regular factor in my life. And although my mother was amazing, loving, supportive, all of the things, there was still that little inner peace. Obviously, I don't know this as a child, but that would believe, why aren't I good enough? And so that's what started my habits of perfectionism, of overachieving, of people pleasing, because in my mind, well, if I'm good at this, then I must be good enough. Well, if these people like me, then I must be good enough. Well, if this is perfect, then I must be good enough, right? And so fast forward to 2007 with the car wreck, all of those things that I thought I had healed over the years only boiled over into a head, because then I was dubbed as Miracle Woman and Walking Miracle. And the first of 3 articles that was written about me said, big bold letters, front page news, miracle on the highway. Woman believed dead is now alive in Indianapolis hospital. And that was a title that I did not invite into my life. But subconsciously, I felt like I had to live up to that. And so I lacked self-care, not realizing that that was tied to the self-worth, because I was doing all the things for all the people all the time, putting my needs not last, not realizing that I was subconsciously telling myself that I wasn't worthy to prioritize my needs because why? I'm not good enough. So I love all of these things that you are talking about. It is so good. So, Mr. Drasko, do you want to play a little game?
Always. So let's do it.
This is called First Class Favorites, and it's very easy. Let me get my handy dandy timer here. And all I'm going to do is say, what is your favorite, fill in the blank, and you're going to fill in the blank. Easy peasy, right?
All right. I think I can handle it. I think that should be all right, you know?
But you got to answer in 10 seconds or less. Otherwise, we're all going to have a consequence, okay? If you miss the buzzer. So no time to sort out, all right, is I'm going to be judged for this or what's going to happen. But we'll start with something easy. What is your favorite snack? Go.
Chocolate covered almonds.
Chocolate covered almonds. Nice. See, you still had 6 seconds to spare.
Listen, when you said, there's constraints and we got to perform, I'm like, okay, like I'm ready to go. You know what I mean?
What is your favorite movie? Go.
Terminator 2.
Ooh, Terminator 2. Why do you like that one?
I mean, I've seen it when I was like a kid and I was just like, this is like the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. You know, like I got the robots, you got like classic Arnold science fiction. So it's just always stuck as like probably a favorite from that time. And I'm going to nerd out a little bit on this one, but like I feel like, because the Terminator franchise, there was a lot of other movies, they're all crappy afterwards, but it was just like, in my opinion, it was shot as like almost like a horror movie, even though it was an action movie. So I think that it made it suspenseful and all the pieces fit together really well. So anyway, I don't want to nerd out into it, but there's a lot of reasons why. But yes, that would be it.
Listen, we are all fine with nerding out, okay? What is your favorite book? Because you know you have that whole big bookshelf, and you said you've read 60 to 70% of them. So what is your favorite book? Make sure you specifically say the title and author. Go.
Okay, I'll say fiction book would be Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and then probably the one I've reread the most would be The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Ooh, okay, with the bonus. Gave us fiction and nonfiction. We like it. We like it. What is your favorite place to travel specifically? Go.
Ooh, okay, Vegas for all of the non-Vegas-y reasons. So, okay, I'll give you context on this one too. So I've only ever been to Vegas for like conferences, workshops, and seminars. I've never actually gone there to like party. And then the first one that I ever went to was like, I was like, I don't really care about going to Vegas. Like, what's the point of going there to just see like some lights and whatever? I'm like, this seems a little trite. And then when I got there, plus like I had like all these like great experiences at these workshops, like it just became one of those cities that just has a different vibe to it when I go there for like me. And it's kind of unexpected. So Vegas would be the one.
Listen, I'm going to have to take you up on trying that out because I like to attend conferences and seminars and all those things like that. And I like to travel a lot. And I've been to Vegas, but more on the vacation side of things. And so I've actually never been to a conference or anything like that in Vegas. One time I was going to go to a training that was in Henderson, Nevada, which is kind of near Vegas, but it got rescheduled to someplace else in a different date and all of those things. So I didn't actually end up doing it. Listen, if you know of any good ones, I'm open to suggestions. So
100%, I will let you know. And yeah, it's that good contrast between like, it's such like a party city and then like you're there for like these deeper reasons. So like it's just that immersive kind of weird thing. It just works for me. And yeah, that's it.
I love it. I love it. What is your favorite drink? Can't say water. Go.
My favorite drink, I would probably say whiskey. For when I do that.
Do you like it straight?
Yeah, straight for sure. And especially like when you taste different ones from like the smoky to like the smooth and all of that, whiskey would be the one.
All of the whiskeys, or do you have a specific one that is like your top-notch favorite out of all of the whiskeys?
Yeah, I don't discriminate. I'm good to try whichever. So I'm good.
Got it. What is your favorite song, artist, and title? Go.
Favorite song. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go "Hurt" by Johnny Cash. So it's a cover of a Nine Inch Nails song, but like I like the way that Johnny Cash redid it, so I'm gonna say "Hurt."
Got it. "Hurt" by Johnny Cash, but you missed the buzzer.
I did. Okay. Well, I guess you stumped me on one. So there you go.
Yes. You have to. What is our consequence? Not just for you, but for the whole entire First Class family that's tuned in right now. What is our consequence? And you can say whatever you like. Some people say you got to take a shot. Some people say you got to do 10 push-ups.
Oh, I get to choose the consequence?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of. I'm gonna bring it back to my gym days, and like everybody does 10 burpees. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna do it that way.
10 burpees? Oh, you're killing me, Drasko. You're killing me. Okay, because I do not like working out. Okay, I do not feel good when I think about working out.
Well,
everybody
you didn't say the pleasant consequence. You just said consequence,
listen,
right? So
true. And for some people, it may very much be pleasant. They might be like, okay, I'll do 20. Me personally, this is why we have to define what life looks like for ourselves, right?
You ain't about that burpee life. So I get it, you know?
No, I don't want it. What is your favorite relaxing activity to do? Go.
Walk in nature.
Oh, walk in nature. Do you take a walk every single day?
I don't, but when I do get out there as like some sort of hike, yeah, that would definitely be at the top of the list.
Nice. Okay, one more. What is your favorite joke or funny moment?
Joke?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's gonna have to be a consequence. I have no idea. I'm terrible at saying jokes. Like in the moment, I can be funny, but like I don't know what the hell I'm doing otherwise. So yeah.
So all right, now we got 20 burpees to do today. Okay, y'all got that? Y'all have 20 burpees to do in the next 48 hours.
Listen, for those of you that have missed your workout, you're welcome. Okay, like this is a good way to like get this done.
Well, thank you for playing First Class Favorites. And listen, First Class family, make sure that you subscribe to our private Patreon community because you will have access to our First Class Favorite Things list. Watch out, Oprah. So it has our reading list, our music playlist, our favorite places to travel because we're a cultured people, and because we prioritize self-care, our favorite relaxing activities, uniquely curated by all of our phenomenal guests. And so now, Mr. Handsome Drasko, you are a part of the author. Yes. And lots of other bonus resources in our private Patreon community, like bonus videos from our fabulous guests, bonus resources, and so much more. So again, click the link, join today. Meanwhile, let's get back into this conversation. Okay, so we've talked about so much here, emotional constipation. I just keep thinking about that. What would you say are like those tips to really just get rid of that emotional constipation that we've talked about?
So I think the main thing that you want to understand about something like that is, firstly, it's very hard to change something that you can't see. Okay, so the first thing, if you're going to do this work yourself, okay, and it's why I always say, like, don't underestimate the power of coaches, because like if you're standing on the balcony, it's very hard to see the building. And a lot of the times, the reason why you want that external mirror is to be able to see the grand picture. Okay. So outside of that, how do you want to do this work yourself? So emotional constipation, the first thing you're actually going to need is courage. The reason, and I guess let me define how I look at something like, because I know it's a funny term, like emotional constipation. What the hell does that actually mean? Right? It is either the experience of stuffing down everything that you feel, or being completely like not even aware of what it is that you're feeling. Okay. So the way that you can actually begin to work on this on your own is through stillness. And the reason why I say you need courage for this is the reason you don't want to be still, the reason you don't want to look at this, the reason that you have the constipation in the first place, because there's a part of you that feels unsafe to actually look at all of this, to actually create space for it, to actually be with it, to lose control if you end up, whatever, crying, yelling, slamming things, whatever the experience actually is. These emotions need to come out. Okay. Much like constipation, like that stuff needs to, better out than in, right? Like that's the general sentiment here. So you have to first become aware of it and know that if it feels uncomfortable, you're probably looking in the right direction. What's going to happen if you try that on your own is very likely going to be this sense of like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? Like, I'm just supposed to like feel things and like cry about it, etc. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Like now that's a much different story. So sometimes your emotional constipation is just emotions that you've stuffed down that need to come out. But sometimes it's actually parts of you that at one point had a very important role that now, let's just say that you're an adult or the situation has passed, that part's unneeded anymore. So you have to actually sit with it compassionately and make, peace with it. So, this might be something like you mentioned, like perfectionism, right? There was a part of you that felt I'm not good enough. And in that same part started to take over a lot of functions with you that said, no, you need to work extra hard so that nothing about you or your output or the things around you can ever be witnessed to be like less than, right? So the emotional constipation in that instance is I'm not really recognizing that the driver of this behavior is an old wounding. So now if I sit with it and I'm uncomfortable and I think about, oh, if I showed up messy, my God, like that just feels like I'm ripping my heart out. Okay, you're now looking in the right direction. So now you can begin to explore and you can literally dialogue with this part. Like it's very trippy when you first like do this, but after a while you get used to it and you're just like, okay, like this perfectionism part, like what do you actually need? Why are you here? What's your role? And you'll often find even the worst parts that we hate the most, they have a very, very good reason as to why they do what they do. You know what I mean? So it's a big modality of what I use in my coaching as well. And if anybody doesn't want to dive into this on their own, like you can look up Internal Family Systems by Richard Schwartz, which is the guy that developed this modality. It is a therapeutic modality, but that's like a good place to start if you're really into like, okay, let me see what this is all about.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing. Now I have to ask you the signature question. If you are new to the First Class Life Show, then First Class Life is actually an acronym that stands for all of the different characteristics and skills that you want to embody into your lifestyle. And for the record, we're only human, so we're not going to get all of them all the time. But the more that you can incorporate into your daily living, then you increase your ability to create your first class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness, which really maximizes your impact in how you show up and serve the world. So if you want to find out what that acronym stands for, then you can do one of two things. You can either go back and listen to the very first episode of the First Class Life Show, where I explain each key factor in detail, or you can head to firstclasslifeshop.com and buy the book, First Class Life, 10 Key Factors to Creating a Life Full of Purpose, Fulfillment, and Happiness. Meanwhile, we're going to ask the handsome Drasko. All right, sir. Which key factor of first class life do you resonate with the most?
So I think the one that stood out for me was the leadership, right? Like the L for leadership. I work with entrepreneurs that are really stepping into their biggest leadership potential, right? That's always what I say. It's like the reason that they're stagnating in their business is because they have a leadership gap that's not allowing them to actually execute on the things that they know and get there. So for me, not only is that the most important factor that kind of, to me, is the umbrella term of everything that I do for people, but I also try and walk my own talk as much as possible. If I'm preaching these things and if I'm teaching, then I try to lead from the front, and like I do a lot of this work on my own. I have my own coaches. I've, done my own stints of therapy. I continuously refine these. Like I always say, I'm my own best client because I use these tools on myself to just like get better and better at doing them so I can serve better. And to me, that encompasses leadership, right? It's leading from the front. It's not, hey, do what I say, not what I do. It's like walking my own talk, to me, is a big part of leadership. So everything that I've described today, everything that I've lived through, I'm talking at it from like actual lived experience. It's not just theoretical. And to me, that's the essence of leadership. So that's why the L would be the one that stands out for me.
And we love it. Speaking of leaders, how do you impact the world as a leader today?
Yeah, so as I've alluded to multiple times throughout this, so I work with established entrepreneurs to quickly and permanently eliminate all of the head trash so they can turn that into either profit inside their business or inner profit as far as fulfillment. So yeah, basically, when I say established entrepreneurs, I mean people that aren't just starting out. And the only reason isn't because I can't help you. It's if you have a skill gap, no amount of inner work is actually going to help you. It would be doing you a disservice to heal all the things, but then you still can't get your business off the ground because you lack the skills. So for me, it's always get the skills, show that you can deliver some results. And if you still can't go to the next level with just that, that's usually when people come to see me. They have the skills. They've done a lot of their own personal development. Now they're in this place of overwhelm and doubt because they're spinning their wheels at this business ceiling. That's when I come in and really help them, like we said, eliminate the head trash that's causing problems in their business. That takes the brakes off of their momentum. Now they're free to press the gas and really accelerate, step into their leadership, and create the next level of their business. So in a nutshell, that's what I do with the entrepreneurs that I work with.
Nice. So if you fit into that, make sure you reach out, and you have a resource that helps with that as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So if you go to www.uplevelmind.com/diagnosis, what you'll be able to do is go through what I call the profit stability leadership gap. So when you are at that point where it's like, a lot, you've invested in knowing the business funnels, you've done whatever, the ads, etc. You've done your own personal development. Usually when the time that people come see me is when they have some sort of profit instability. Either they're going through feast and famine, either they're overwhelmed because they're just working a lot from not a lot of return. Like they're lacking that stability in the business that would allow them to go to the next level. If you're in that position, you can go through the profit stability diagnosis. It's just 10 simple questions to really outline and pinpoint exactly what is the leadership gap that's currently stopping you from having the stability to go to the next level. And then more importantly, what things you have to look at and address. So it's very quick, but very powerful, and also based on real world data. This is not something that I made up. I've literally analyzed hundreds of coaching calls that I've recorded, whether it's on my podcast or with clients, and then look for the similarities. That's what went into this diagnosis. So you're in good hands if you go through it.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. Now let everyone know where they can find you on these internet streets.
Yeah. So everything related to me and what I do is with Up Level Mind. So my program is called Up Level Mind. I run a podcast called Up Level Mind as well. Basically what I do on my podcast is a bit different than most typical podcasts, is I bring on entrepreneurs who are in this situation of anticipating or thinking that their me problems are causing their business problems. And I coach them on air. So I walk them through what's called an inner limit diagnosis. Everything that I've kind of described so far, I personalize for the individual on air. I walk them through it. They can know exactly what their head trash is and what, like how it impacts their business. So that's an uplevelmindpodcast.com, whether you want to listen to it or you want to apply to be on it, that's up to you. And obviously Instagram, it's all Up Level Mind. So however you want to enter my world is through Up Level Mind. So that's the easy part.
Yes, thank you. And that sounds like fun.
You would have to ask some people that were on there, but yeah, I would say it's fun on my end. But yeah, like I always say, all of you is welcome if you do want to do that. It's not about making reality TV; it's about what's present. And sometimes tears have been shed on that show. Things have been released, things have been realized. But yeah, if it's for you and you want to go through an experience of having courage and vulnerability to be witnessed in that way, it is a great way to get a lot of insight on what might be currently ailing you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And make sure you guys go click all of the things, click all of the links, and follow Drasko Raicevic on all the platforms so that you can stay tuned in to these phenomenal gems that he drops. So with that said, I want to thank you for spending yet another hour here with us. We know that you could be doing anything in the world, but you have spent your time here with us today, and we are grateful for that. So make sure that you continue to go out there, maximize your impact, and create your first-class life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness because you deserve it. Until next time, see you later. Bye.
Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. But please be sure to subscribe to the First Class Life Show. And don't forget to rate, leave a review, and join our private community so that we can continue to provide you with great personal development conversations to help you maximize your impact while creating a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and happiness. You deserve it.